Ooh, that looks tasty.
1,000 years after that first group of men reached for a better life, as man stretched its wings to discover the art of magic and use magic, so too did they actively destroy their own world. What lies beneath the ground for which thousands walk? Are you brave enough to find out? What other things might you learn if you delve into the reasons behind the thrones of EverWyrd? What magic, power, and riches might you discover if you're brave enough to dare? Welcome, folks, to The Hungry Gamer is back with another Kickstarter preview. And today we are talking about EverWyrd, a fantasy gaming system. Now, before I jump in at all, let me just say that this is a prototype. There may be changes to what comes out of the Kickstarter. And I will also say that the prototype I got did not come with any of the standees that will eventually be available. Rather, I'm using one of the heroes from my City of Kings game, and then a bunch of these banners also from City of Kings, just to represent enemies that may come out as I show you how this game works. Briefly, what is EverWyrd? EverWyrd is a real mashup, a joining of a tabletop role-playing game and then a dungeon crawling board game. If you took both of them and put them together, this is what you would get. And what I am going to show you here is one of the modes called the Dungeon Dive. Now, if you are not interested in how this works, you just want to know my final thoughts, you're going to want to jump ahead to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us that are still here, let's talk about how this game works. Like any other role-playing game, you have to create your character. And this particular game is quite simple in that it gives you a choice of 5 different races, and each of these races have a basic bonus, and you also have 3 different classes that you can choose from. You have your magic users, you have your rogue, you have your fighter. Magic users encompass both healing and regular wizardry, as it were. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a character that I've put together as I have been playing, testing this game a few times. And so I have a little more than you would start with, but not much more than you would start the game. So I have, and again I'm using this character here, I've made a seed, and I'm sorry for my handwriting here being so poor, which is an elf, and she is a rogue. And the way the game works is everything is done with these 3 abilities. You have your fight, your ability, and your mind. Ability is any kind of skill you might use for the most part. Fight clearly is fighting, and mind is anything that has to do with magic. Then over here, you get a certain number of skill points that you are able to use to purchase abilities. Now, my character, being the elf that it is, starts with the ability to cast spells, and I've chosen this word school as my specialty. I'll explain that in a little bit. Then I've purchased the abilities to disarm traps, use daggers, wear light armor, and to dodge. So then down here, I have my armor rating, which is 1. Dodge makes it actually 2. Here's my speed, which is determined by my ability, plus 3. Over here, we have your hit points. Hit points are very simply determined by your fight ability. Your fight ability gives you a certain number that you add on to 2d6, and this just happens to be the last time I played, the amount of damage, life that I had left. And then here's all the stuff I purchased down here. That's the gold I have. And those are my unused skill points, which eventually I'll be able to use to purchase more skills or up these abilities over here. And then down here, this is just where I'm tracking enemies as I go. Finally, since I have the ability to cast spells over here, I have all the spells that I know, and then one more that's in this magical red word stone that I found. This is just my shorthand. I won't be showing you this again, but I wanted to give you an idea of what the character generation looks like. It's actually very, very, very fast. I know what you are more interested in is how does this game work. So clearly everyone would create their characters. Now, it's up to you how much roleplay you want to put into it. If you want to have a whole roleplay discussion before, whereas you meet up, everything you would do in a D&D game or something like that, you can do that. Or you can just jump right in and do a straight dungeon crawl. This game will come with an entire quest book of different quests that you can do, or there is also the Dungeon Dive, which is what I'm doing, which is really just a way to go in and fight and kill some stuff. And that's what I'm going to show you. The first thing that happens is you and the other players build the dungeon. And it's fairly simple. Again, the quest mode might tell you exactly how to build it, but for the dungeon dive, or just a regular quest that you're putting together with your group, this is how you would do it. So here, I have my stack of tiles, and each player gets to go around and place one. And so for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them out, and I'm not going to place them all out. Depending on how many tiles you have, that determines really how big your dungeon is. In the dungeon dive mode, you start here with your cave entrance, and then you will go through the whole deck here and put them out, and that is your dungeon. And the idea being you're supposed to go through and explore every single of the numbered rooms in the dungeon. You'll see some of those. But let's just kind of see how this works, and I'll just put a few out. So we start out, and I would draw, and there we go, and the first player gets to place the tile. And so I will just place it right there. And the next person gets to draw one, and they get to place a tile. And I will place it over here. And you get the idea, we're just slowly building out this dungeon. And I'll tell you what the symbols on there mean in just a minute. And so here we have our first numbered room, and they go 1 through 5. And I will put this one right over here. And then, because there is not an actual tile there, this means that this is a door. And there will be door standees that you can get as well. For now, I'm just throwing one of these on there just for ease. There you go. And now there's a door. And then we keep going. And here is another corridor here. And so I could choose, if I wanted, I can put it right here. Because, as we already said, all you have to do is add another door. And then we kind of, whoops, I drew 2 there, that's okay. We keep going through, and we keep on building our dungeon here. And you'll see it goes out pretty quick. And up, there we go, there's another room. And why not? I will put that one right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and just throw out 1 or 2 more here before I stop, because this is really all we need for me to show how this works. And I've actually, looks like I've gone beyond my shot here. There we go. Sorry about that. I went so far, it was beyond what my camera angle is. But again, that's not super important. You can see how it just builds out, and I used about half of the tiles there, so you kind of get an idea. And then, like any other game, you simply go through and you explore the dungeon. Now, there are some symbols here that I will tell you about. So this symbol here, this means that there's some kind of alchemical thing that you can find in this room. When you roll on a table, you see what's there, and if you have the alchemy skill, which some of you've purchased, you can harvest it and then potentially use those to make potions or whatever. We have this symbol here. This symbol here means that there is a trap in this corridor. Very simple. And then there's only one other symbol right here. This means that there is treasure in this corridor, and you may have multiple of these symbols, like this has a trap and a treasure, but you get the idea. And so that's how you procedurally generate this dungeon. And again, the quests tell you exactly how the dungeon works. So on your turn, I have my little seed here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to send her on into this dungeon, and we will see what happens. Now, in the non-dungeon dive mode, every time you enter a room, not a corridor, you roll on an event table and you see what is in there, what happens. At the end of each dungeon dive turn, you roll on the chart and see what it is that's going to happen, and it's a little bit different. And sometimes if bad guys get spawned in a room, they get spawned kind of far away, and they will slowly make their way to you, and there's rules for exactly how that works, but I'm not going to dive into how that specifically happens. So my character's speed is 6, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take her over here, and let's see what we can find in this room right there, this corridor, which dead ends. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, when I step into this room, I have to deal with the trap. Very simple. So I take my deck of trap cards here, and I shuffle them up, and I draw one. Very simple. Here we have spears. The walls concealed ports that, when triggered, project spears across the space. So we look here, and we see how difficult is this trap to spots. It is a medium difficulty. If you check the book, that means you have to roll an 8 to spot it. Then you add to that, you add your ability score. My character's ability score is a 3. So I'm trying to get an 8. Excuse me, I'm trying to get a 9, because you add this right here. I'm trying to get over a 9 on 2 dice with my 2d6 plus 3. I got a 6 plus 3 is 9. I did not beat it. So I did not detect that trap. Then, had I detected it, I would get a chance to disarm it. And again, I'm able to disarm a trap if I have purchased the disarm traps skill, which I have, but nothing I can do about that. So the next thing we do is we go to avoidance. This is easy to avoid. And so the easy number is 6. So again, 6 plus 1, so I need a 7 on my ability roll, which is 2d6, again, plus 3. If I had a skill acrobatics, I would get to add more. I will also say, had I detected the trap, I would get to add 2 more, but I did not. So I'm straight up 2d6 plus 3. And that is an 8. That is more than the trap, so I managed to dodge the attack. Very simple. Then I can pick up my treasure. So I just go to the treasure deck here, and I grab what's on top. In this case, I found a bag of coins. Hooray, some money for me. And there's all kinds of things that you can possibly find in here. You see there's rations, you see it can be used 3 times, metal of shadows, boots, spears, everything you could want in a fantasy game. If I had the ability to collect herbs, what I would do is I would go to my herbology table here, and I would roll 2d6, and I will just do that here. There we go. And that is a 4. And I would go to my table, and we see that a 4 means I found some ginseng. And I would be able to collect some ginseng. I could write it down on my table. Then that is the end of my turn. I've done my move, and then I did one other action. My action was to pick up this treasure. So then I would roll 2d6 and see what event happens. And again, this is only in the dungeon dive mode. I rolled an 11. So I simply go to my event chart here. I look down and I see that in 11, several underlings occupy the path ahead. Place 1d6 level 0 creatures on 1 tile deeper. And so I would be placing some enemies out there. Now I'm not going to do that right now, but you'll see I have this level 0 chart that I can roll on, and it tells me all the stats. And I would put 1d6 of them out, and I'll use my banners. But for the moment, I'm not going to do that because it's a little bit longer than I want to go into at this moment. So, and after I had gone and placed the monsters on the tile, which again, as I said, I would have rolled on the chart, then it would be a new round. And again, I'm only not doing that because this is not a playthrough. I'm just showing you how it works. So the next thing you would need to know is about doors. And as I said, these would be standees. They just have little standee bases out there. And so I'll move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's worth noting that you can also choose to run, which is a double move, but you are unable to do anything else if you happen to do that double move. Now, at this door, I wind up with a choice. I can either attempt to pick the lock, or I can bust it down. If you don't have the pick lock skill, clearly you got to bust it down. The big difference is, if you pick the lock and get in there, then you can wind up winning the initiative. You have a chance at that, meaning you will go first. If you wind up busting down the door, then the bad guys know you're coming and they have the initiative, meaning all of them will get to attack first. So my elf here does not actually have the ability to pick locks. It's not something I have earned yet. Now, using my dagger, I get a +1 bonus on any kind of fight roll. So what I imagine I'm doing is I'm like stabbing the dagger in there and like busting it around, trying to break the lock mechanism is what I imagine I'm doing. Now, it's possible that this door is not locked. I almost didn't tell you that. It's only locked if when you find the door, you roll a die on a 5 or a 6, it is locked. So this door is not locked at all. If it was locked, which is what we're going to pretend it is, I would have to roll my 2 dice, add my fight of 3, and that is a 6, 7, 8, 9. I would have succeeded in opening the door, and then you just remove the standee completely, and your door is open. Then I would have to see what is inside this room. And that's very simple. You simply roll your 2 dice, and you consult your chart. I have a 10. As we see here, a 10 will mean a creature is roaming the area. Place it on any currently occupied tile. So as it turns out, I open the door and there's nothing in there. One just happened to show up right here behind me, which is fine. So let's grab this little thing here, and I will put it in the room right behind me. We'll imagine he just kind of walked in right there behind. He's like, hey, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm doing elf stuff, whatever. So I will turn around and deal with this creature. So luckily for me, it is only a single creature. So to find out exactly what it is, I go to my table here. And because I have not cleared any of the numbered rooms yet, I am on this creature table level 0. So let's see what we get. We have it here. There we go. That is a 5. And as I look on this chart here, we see that 2 to 5 is an imp. It's an underling. It's nothing particularly frightening. It has a 0 fight bonus. The 2 ability has this fast strike ability, which I'm not going to go into what all the abilities are, but it's something that it has. It has a 2 mind ability, and it also will have 2 spells. It does 2 damage. It can take 2 damage and has no armor. Now, the imps actually have a fair amount of stuff going on with them, so I'm just going to pretend that I got a giant rat instead. It's a little bit more straightforward. Same thing, just without the spells, without the fast strike. So that is one giant rat that has showed up behind me. And so, it's very simple. We will start by rolling for initiative. It's just a straight d6 roll. You may have abilities to add to it. The black is the bad guy, the white is me. And so the bad guy gets to go first. And the rat then rolls its 2d6 and adds its fight, which, as I'd already said, is a 1. And so there we have 11, 12. So the rat has a 12. Then I'm going to roll 2d6 and I'm going to add my armor and then anything else that adds to that, which in my case is dodge. So I'm adding a +2 to my roll. And I have a 6, 7, 8, so I have failed. I will take 1 damage. I would go to my sheet and just mark off 1, which would put me down to 17. Not really worried. Then I get my chance to respond. And my dagger only does 1 damage, so I don't do a lot of damage here. But I'll do a fight, and I get to add, so I have 10, and I add my 3 total. That is a 13. The rat would roll, and it gets a 7 plus 0. I would do 1 damage to it. Now, it's also important for me to say, if on my attack roll, I rolled boxcars, 2 6s that is, I would do double damage. If I rolled snake eyes, 2 1s, then the enemy would actually get an attack of opportunity on me, a chance to hit me. And it works the other way. If on my defense I roll boxcars, I get to take an attack of opportunity on the attacker, the enemy, and if I roll snake eyes, then it does double damage. So I've done 1 to it, it's down to 1, it's done 1 to me, I'm down to 17. Now, for this next attack, I'm going to use some magic. And I have all my magic spells here, and I'm just going to do some serious overkill. You'll see all these different things I have, and I'm going to go ahead, and I do apologize, I should have moved. The rat would have moved next to me, or I would have moved next to it using my movement, which is based off your ability score +3. I apologize, I should have done that. In any event, I'm going to go crazy, and I'm going to use a bolt of lightning and just obliterate this rat. So I'm going to move to get out of the way. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to zap it with a lightning bolt clearly in my range of 8. And on my sheet, I will mark off that I have used 1 of these spells. Now, the magic is a little bit different. It's in that you are comparing mind scores. So for me, I have a 2 mind score, and then because this symbol here, this is my school word, I get a +1, so I have +3, and I compare that to the rat's score, which is a 0, and that is its defense. So I roll mine, and I have a 6, 7, 8, 9 versus the rat, which has a 6. It fails. I blast it with lightning. it is gone as it should be. Now that that is over, then I would go to my chart here, and I had rolled a 10, and I look over here, and is there any treasure? Well, this rat happened to have a shiny collar on or something, and so I get to go to my treasure deck. I'm just going to grab one here from the middle, and I have a steel maul. So I have a really fancy, powerful hammer that I could use. So I could equip myself with that instead of my daggers. I'm not as good with it, but it does a whole bunch of damage. And so you get the idea. You play through, and so at the end of my turn, I would go ahead and roll again on my event table here and see what happens, because it's the dungeon dive, and I would rinse and repeat as I make my way through the dungeon here all the way until the end. Now, a couple things that I should go ahead and note here. The first one is there is something called the pack leader. And this is only used when you have a group. I only had the one hero out there. And the pack leader winds up being responsible for doing various roles, making various decisions, and it's a way to cut out some of the potential discussion and argument that can come in this kind of game. It's a neat little mechanic. The other thing that I do need to go ahead and point out is that as you explore each room, you are getting progressively harder and harder monsters that you are facing. I think I've said that a few times, but I just want to reiterate that as I will just show you here. So we have creature table 0, level 1, levels 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we're getting all the way up to dragons that are there. And with 4 fight, 4 ability, 10 health, 3 defense. So they get harder and harder and harder as you go, as it should. It makes the game feel a little more epic. However, I also need to point out that every single quest, in addition to having its own setup out here, also has its own herbology table and also has its own event table and what kind of monsters you may be facing. So each one is a bit different in that regard. So, what do I like about this game? So, I have to say, I like the simplicity of the system. I like that there are only 2 stats that I'm dealing with. I'm only dealing with 2d6. That's all I ever have to roll. I really like that. I like that these tiles are small. And I can fill this table pretty easily, but it's not a massive game. You can play this on a human-sized table. I like the simplicity of each of the tiles, and you know what's on there. There's something for you to find that you can harvest if you have the skills. There is a trap. There is treasure. Great. I like that it has the very simple mechanic for exploring different rooms. It's very simple. Roll on the table, see what you get. And I do like the randomness of the stuff that is roaming around in the dungeon. And again, it's so easy to theme your dungeon to whatever it is you want. You got a whole bunch of goblin miniatures. Well, it's pretty easy to make a goblin dungeon. And because the stats are so simple, it's easy to fill out that chart. I like the treasure deck. It comes with enough stuff to be interesting, and it has enough random things in there that seem special, and it also has plenty of generic things that you might want. And let's see if I can find one in here. And so here we have our magic weapon. So you find something, but again, it's random. And so it tells you why it's special, but it can be any of these different basic types of weapons that you can find. And I like that. It's enough to keep the game small and compact, but enough to allow you to use your imagination. I also think that the spells are overall well done. There are 3 distinct different schools. I showed you the one symbol, and we have your necromancy type magic, and you have your, I'm forgetting what this one is called, but there will be a lovely subtitle telling you right here what that one's called. And it's enough, again, to keep the feeling like you can specialize in a school of magic, but you're not confined by it. I also like the skill purchase system. Anybody can do anything for the most part. There is one race that can't ever cast spells, but you get the idea. You can be a fighter and be working through as a fighter and then decide, you know what, I really would prefer to have some magic. Something has happened. So you can save up your skill points, buy more mind ability, save up your skill points, buy the ability to cast spells, just like that, and you can create whatever kind of hero you want. I really enjoy that. All in all, I really feel like what this game it is a vehicle to allow people to have a role-playing game without getting bogged down in a million rules. And it allows you to take your combat in your role-playing game out of the imagination and then put it down and be a little bit more tactical about it. And I think that is a really great thing. And the last thing I'll say is the rules are, as I've already said multiple times, very simple, and it is clear and clean and easy to understand. And I'll also say it does not take any more than 3 minutes to create a character. It is just that fast. So, what are my quibbles about this game? And this is a tough one for me because this is not a board game in the sense of what I usually review. This is more of a mix between a board game and a role-playing game. And I don't do very much as far as role-playing games goes. I've certainly done it in my youth, as it were. And so you have to take that into account as you listen to what my quibbles here are. I will say, my first one is that I think in the game's simplicity and desire to be clean and simple for everyone to play, I do think that some things are missed, at least in the version that I have, and I'm sure the odds are good that this will be corrected. Some of the cards, like some of the spells, it's not fully clear what it does. And I'll give you an example, and I'm using this one because this is one that I found when I was playing just the other night. I found a magic stone that had this pain spell in it, which is great. And it says here, the target is crippled by mystical pain and all limbs unable to move. Great. However, anyone who's played a role-playing game knows there is a lot of leeway there. Does this literally mean they cannot move at all, and so I can just go wail on them? They can't defend themselves? Do they still get to roll with their defense because they might have armor and I have to get through it? And. So there are some things that I think need a little more explanation, or at the very least you will have to house rule. I will say that on a lot of the random monster tables, they're great, but there is, at least in the dungeon dive, there's not a single monster that has a ranged attack. Well, that seems silly to me. I can have ranged weapons on my character, so why don't the monsters have any ranged attacks? And again, that's a very simple fix, and you can easily put that into your own as you are creating it. And then the only other thing that has stuck in my craw a little bit is in the prototype that I have, there's very few items available. And I don't know if you remember, but after the last dungeon my own little character did, she has almost 200 gold. Well, that's not a ton, but that's a lot of stuff that I could buy, but there's just not much to buy. It doesn't have in the book right now a way to go buy a special dagger, to go buy a magic potion, or whatever those may be. And I think that's something that the game could use. Just a few things, just a few pages that kind of expand upon what is available. And then it's up to you and your game group what it is that you want to do. Are you going to use that and just say, oh, you can just purchase whatever you want? How's that going to work? But I do wish that that was something that was there. So in any event, that's it. That is EverWyrd, this mashup of a dungeon crawl and a role-playing game. I think it has a lot of good stuff going for it. I really think if you are the type who enjoys the dungeon world system, which I actually really enjoy, which is fast, simple, uses 2d6, and you just kind of move straight through, but also like dungeon crawls, this is something worth checking out. I really compare this the most, though, to what 4 Against Darkness would be as a tabletop. That's what this is like to me. So if any of that sounds like something that is good, then you want to check this Kickstarter out. As always, if I have made any mistakes that you are familiar with the game, let me know in the comments with the timestamp. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.